What's up everyone, my name is Rosendo, welcome back to my channel, and we are back with another video, and today we're going to be doing something a little bit different. We're going to be rating workout genres today. I'm a big EDM guy, I'm a big workout guy, I don't think I mentioned that, maybe mentioned it once, but today we're just going to have some fun. We're going to make a video kind of rating EDM workout genres, which ones are the best to work out to, at least in my opinion, and we're going to have some fun. Again, a little bit of a relaxed video. I've been wanting to do this video for a while, not that long, but long enough, but we're finally going to do it. So without further ado, let's hop into Tier Maker. All right, we are back in Tier Maker. Now, if you saw my last tier list video, it was rating my rating my discography on a tier list. That was actually a really fun video to make, I'm not gonna lie. And I mentioned in that video that I like tier list formats in general, that they weren't gonna go anywhere, that maybe you should expect some more videos soon in the future. And here we are now, back with the tier list. So again, I like tier lists. I talked about why I like them in that video, but today we're doing something a little bit different. Today we're gonna be rating EDM genres to work out to on a tier list. All right, and in case I haven't mentioned it before, I'm pretty big into lifting. Those are kind of the two things I dedicate myself to, music and lifting, EDM and lifting. Those are just kind of the two things that kind of run my life. For those of you who don't know, I've been lifting for a few years. I'm a competitive power lifter. I really take my lifting seriously. I enjoy it, and I definitely want to take it a lot further. So that's why I kind of have a lot of genres under my belt that I really like to cycle through, particularly bass and aggressive genres, EDM genres that is, because again, those are my two specialties. EDM and working out. So here we are. We're here with the tier list video. We're going to be cycling through some of the genres that I listen to when I work out, and we're just going to be rating on a tier list. Basically just another video to have some fun, for me to talk about what genres I like working out to, maybe recommend a few new ones to you guys if you guys are looking for some workout genres, especially in the EDM world. And we're going to throw in some bonuses at the end. But for now, we're looking at EDM genres I work to work out to, EDM genres I like to work out to, and which ones are my favorite. All right, but without further ado, let's actually get to it, because you guys should see right here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 genres that I'm going to be rating. These are pretty much the 5 big genres that I like to cycle through, more or less. I'll talk about them in detail in a bit. And one thing I'll say before we get started is, remember people, that this is a tier list video. I will be subjective. Now, don't get me wrong, I consider myself to be a pretty objective person, so I'm going to rate these as objectively as possible, but there will be some subjectivity to them. And B, this is actually a really big recency bias video. If you had asked me like a year ago to make this tier list, things would be switched around quite a bit. So this is just right now, at the time of recording. This Today's April 27th, 2025. Again, a year ago, this list would be different. Maybe a year it'll be different again. But right now, this is a lot of recency bias, and I'll address the ones that I'm going to be a little bit more recency biased on when I'm actually rating them. And last thing, how did I actually rate these genres? I'm rating these genres based off of I'll explain my reasoning for where I put them and why I like listening to them in a bit. But this video was kind of like 8 weeks in the making, where I just spent, a week listening to a different genre and, listening to a different genre every workout and seeing which ones I liked, what I liked about them. And what I ended up doing is I actually kind of compared what it's like listening to them just on shuffle, if you're on Spotify or Apple Music or whatever, just listening to them on shuffle with a playlist of these tracks, or listening to a live DJ set in these genres, where you kind of get the full experience of getting tracks in a more presented format, a little bit more mixed, and you get to have kind of a good variety and a good progression there. So that's what I did to establish kind of a baseline of how I listen to these genres when I worked out. All right, but let's get into it in no particular order, starting with drum and bass. Now, again, I'm going to be kind to these genres. These are all genres I like. None of these are going to go in the D tier, or else they probably wouldn't be listening to them when I work out. But starting with drum and bass, where are we putting drum and bass? Here's the thing. I could honestly just put most of these in S, but I'm going to do that. I'm not going to lie. I'm going to do that. All right, so let's do this. Drum and bass, S tier genre, easy. It's one of my favorite genres to work out to. Now, again, these are kind of all my favorite genres to work out to, but this is just another opportunity for me to say a few things about drum and bass and what I like about it. Now, drum and bass is probably the fastest BPM out of the EDM genres. And again, we're just going to kind of consider at least A, the genres I listen to, and B, kind of your standard bass and aggressive genres. There's no like hardcore or hard style on here, or even like kind of especially hardcore on here. So there are things lacking, but we're just talking about these genres if you haven't picked up on that already. So drum and bass is probably the fastest of BPM out of the more popular EDM genres, especially right now. Drum and bass is really big right now, and we're looking at drum and bass. I mean, it's like 170, 172, 174 BPM. So that is kind of why it has its edge over all these other genres. That's why I think it deserves a spot in the S tier. Don't get me wrong, a lot of these other ones are going to go in the S tier as well, but drum and bass definitely has its edge for that reason. It's aggressive, has good rhythm, has good bass lines. It delivers a lot of things, but the BPM and the high energy definitely give it the edge. Now, as far as working out to drum and bass, I mentioned that either A, I put a playlist on shuffle of just drum and bass tracks, or B, I actually listen to a live drum and bass set by a big DJ. So drum and bass, it loses points on the shuffle factor. You can't really, I didn't enjoy it all that much listening to it on shuffle because you get too many lows and it just isn't quite as clean. But listening to a live set, it actually does a really good job. Now for drum and bass, the set I chose was Sub Focus's DMB All Stars 360 from 2023. Now I listened to a few other live drum and bass sets when I was kind of in the process of when I was experimenting, if you will, with this when making this video. But that was probably my favorite set that I listened to, and I had a really good workout when I listened to it, and it was just a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun that workout, and drum and bass definitely delivered. Sub Focus definitely delivered. And last thing I'll say about drum and bass is if I had to kind of give a specific scenario when you would listen to drum and bass, well, don't get me wrong, I was listening to it while lifting. But I do think drum and bass has a very good edge when you're doing cardio. When you're doing high intensity things, the high BPM definitely kind of, it gets you excited, it gets you energetic. So I think for cardio purposes, especially even if it's slow, if it's a steady state cardio or if it's high intensity cardio, drum and bass, I think, has a really good edge. So high BPM, really good for cardio, fun genre to listen to, S tier genre, drum and bass. All right, moving on, we have dubstep. Dubstep, kind of like your standard, in my opinion at least, your standard bread and butter heavy lifting genre. Dubstep's gonna go into the S tier. If you had asked me 7 weeks ago, I would have maybe dropped it to A. But and then if you had asked me like a year ago, it would be back at S. But dubstep, S tier lifting genre for sure. I'll talk about why all of these genres kind of went down here later. But this is an S tier genre, against all recency bias. But if there was about a 1 week spot there where every single other genre on this list except for one was just down in the C. But dubstep, S tier genre, this is kind of like your bread and butter heavy lifting, going for a PR, personal record, going for a heavy lift genre. Aggressive drops, probably the most aggressive drops of all genres. Again, at least the ones in here, we're excluding things like hardcore and things like that. But dubstep, pure aggression. I lift heavy. I'm going for, I'm a competitive power lifter. I'm going for 1 rep maxes, 2 rep maxes, 3 rep maxes, and all that stuff. Dubstep is on top there. Now, I'll be honest, dubstep loses its edge when you're just listening to songs on shuffle, because if you're listening to songs on shuffle on a normal playlist, you kind of need to time your drops. This is something I did for a long time, by the way, and I still do. You time, a minute into when the drop's going to happen in the track, and you just time it so that you're setting up for your lift, and then 1 minute later when the drop's about to hit, you're doing the heaviest part of the lift. So that's the problem with dubstep, is because it's such an aggressive genre that it has a lot of lows and a lot of kind of relaxed elements in order to deliver that aggressive drop. Not all tracks are like that, but most tracks are like that. So you can't really listen to it on shuffle without timing your drops to your heavy lifts. I mean, if you're doing like a normal set, maybe, but if you're going for like a 1 rep max or something, and you're going for a PR on something, you definitely want to be listening to it during the drop. So dubstep does lose on the shuffle factor. But other than that, the actual aggression on the drops serve great for heavy lifts, and my set of choice this time was Jessica Oddfred at EDC Las Vegas 2024. Now, I will acknowledge at this point that the hard part about these genres is it's really just what you're in the mood for. That Jessica Oddfred set I just kind of chose randomly. There was one time where earlier when I was making this video where I was like, okay, I did one of these genres, now let me do the other one, dubstep, let me choose a set, let me go for an Excision set and go from there. And I just wasn't in the mood for dubstep. So if you had asked me again 7 weeks ago when this happened, probably would put this in A or B because I just wasn't in the mood for that genre. Same thing with drum and bass. But again, about 2 or so weeks ago, I was in the mood for some dubstep. I didn't know who I wanted to listen to. And again, I like having no expectations when I listen to a DJ set. So I chose Jessica Oddfred. I'd never listened to her before, but I knew she made some good dubstep. Went for an EDC Las Vegas 2024 set because I was at EDC Las Vegas 2024, but I didn't see her. So I went for that set, and it was just, again, so much fun. You had the aggression there, and you kind of got a little bit more energy than listening to a playlist on shuffle where, things get really calm for like 60-70% of the time, because if that drop lasts 1 minute but the track is 3-4 minutes, then you get more downtime than you do uptime, which when you're hitting PRs is good, but you kind of need to time things. So again, getting that live set definitely made the difference. Dubstep on shuffle, but it's still a pretty good lifting genre. But dubstep sets, pretty good if you choose the right set at the right time. Again, it's all about what you're feeling in that moment. That Jessica Oddfred set, had a very fun time listening to that set. And again, long story short, the main takeaway for dubstep in the S tier genre, most aggressive out of these. When you're going for a heavy lift, that's the genre to go to. All right, next up on the tier list is bass house. Bass house is one of those genres that does not go in the S tier. Not all of these are going to go in the S tier. But bass house is one of them. This is probably going to be one of the lower rated genres. Now, this is nothing against bass house. I love bass house. We're going to go B tier. But bass house just doesn't deliver the same aggression or energy that some of these other genres do. So it's not the best for, you know, going for your heavy lifts, but I wouldn't listen to this going for my heavy lifts. I would just kind of listening to it when I'm just relaxing and doing some normal stuff. So I don't want to judge bass house too harshly on, oh, it doesn't give you that energy, because it's not going to give you the same energy as these other genres. But that being said, I'm a competitive powerlifter. I kind of want that energy, so I'm putting bass house at B in the friendliest way possible. Bass house is something I would listen to when I'm having like a chill lifting session, or if I'm done with all my heavy lifts and I'm doing my accessory work, you know, my other work, my isolation work. That's probably when I'll opt for some bass house. I like listening to bass house in that context because I don't want to be listening to, you know, my heavy lifting stuff, my dubstep and my drum and bass when I'm doing my accessory work. That's when I want something a little bit more chill. If I'm listening to music at all, sometimes I don't. So that's where I would put bass house. Again, I can't put it S just because it doesn't kind of match the same energy of those other genres, but it's not supposed to. But that's where I'm putting bass house. Now, bass house being a house genre, you can get away with listening to it on shuffle a lot more often. You don't really need the same live set that you kind of want out of things like drum and bass and dubstep. So again, a lot of this is recency bias because I don't listen to bass house all that often. I didn't choose a set when I made this video in the last, you know, 7 weeks. Actually, I haven't really chose a set at all when I was listening to bass house. There was some times where I'm listening to drum and bass where I'm like, you know what, I really need something live because just on shuffle isn't cutting it. Bass house on shuffle always cut it, so I didn't really need a live set. And yeah, good for accessory work, good for other things. I like bass house. Bass house is a good genre. Still gives you some aggression more than like tech house. That's why I'm including it on this list. I wouldn't really work out to like tech house or, you know, progressive house when I could just play bass house, where you get the same thing just with a little bit more energy. So for isolation work, for my accessory work, I like bass house. If I'm doing like a chill bench press, I like bass house. But other than that, I'm not going to put it at the top of the top. That's the other thing. Sometimes when I'm doing my chill work and my isolation work, I might not even want to listen to music. If I'm chilling, then I don't really need any sort of energy to begin with. So I'm not going to opt for bass house or any sort of music. So again, B tier genre. I still like it. B tier in the most friendliest way, not because I dislike it, but because it has its time, it has its place. It does not match the higher energy lifts, but that's okay. It's not meant to. Just friendly B tier for bass house. All right, next up we have hard techno. Now this is an interesting one because this is where, if you saw my EDC breakdown video, this is where I get to talk about Sarah Landry. If you saw my EDC breakdown video, you saw that when I was going through the lineup, when I saw Sarah Landry's name, I mean, I was at a loss for words. I was just speechless. I mean, hard techno is going in the S. It grabbed a hold of my heart about 7 weeks ago. 8 weeks ago, actually. 8 weeks ago. Yeah, it grabbed a hold of my heart like 8 weeks ago, and it has not let go, and it delivers every single time. So real quick, and I mean real quick, I will try not to ramble here because I know I will. A little bit about hard techno and Sarah Landry and how did I get into it. Again, I'm going to make this quick. I was at EDC 2024. It was day 3. I was catching Coven, Sub Focus, and then then there was a set. This was all at one stage. I was circuit ground stage. I was catching Coven, Sub Focus, and then an artist I didn't recognize, and then 7 Lions. And it was my last day. It was gonna be a quick day, so I didn't really want to leave the stage and come back because I was in such a good spot. I was like kind of at the front, so I didn't want to leave the stage and come back. So I figured, let me just catch this artist I've never heard of, Sarah Landry. Sure. You know, I don't know what type of music she makes. I don't know anything about it, but let's catch it. So it was Coven, Sub Focus. I stayed for Sarah Landry, knowing nothing about her, and then 7 Lines was on. And that was kind of how I was thrown into hard techno out of nowhere without knowing it. I hadn't listened to techno before at that point. I've heard maybe a song. I knew of the songs, but I never really listened to it. And that just kind of threw me in the deep end. And hard techno, and this is actually where I get to start talking about kind of the actual how it applies to the genre. Sorry, how it applies to this tier list. Hard techno, in my eyes, it kind of had this energy that no other genre does. I mean, drum and bass has kind of that rhythm and that groove. Dubstep has that aggression, but hard techno just kind of has this energy that can't be matched by other genres. Not that it's better than other genres, but it has this very unique style of energy, which is probably why I'm assuming there's this pipeline. I mean, if you're in the EDM sphere, there's a pipeline where people start listening to like mainstream EDM, and then the pipeline is the more seasoned you get, the more you kind of gravitate towards the hard techno side of things. But again, it has a very unique energy. I definitely discovered that while Sarah Landry said, I was more kind of in awe and shocked during the set more than I was enjoying it, although I did enjoy it, but I was just very thrown off because I had no clue what to expect. But that's how I kind of got into hard techno. I never listened to it. This is 2024. I never listened to hard techno after that. And then about 8 weeks ago, I was having kind of a rough workout. I was having a hard time focusing, and something inside me just told me to go back to I remember that energy that Sarah Landry delivered, and something inside me told me, let me just go listen to a Sarah Landry set while I do this workout. And I had probably one of my best workouts workouts of all time. Not because I lifted the most weight, but because I felt so locked in, so focused, so energetic that, I mean, hard techno delivered in a way that the other genres didn't. So that's the story of how I got into hard techno. That's why I'm placing it S tier. It delivers the most, and in my opinion, where hard techno has an edge over these other genres is that hard techno kind of gives you the most locked in feel. It's probably the most consistent out of all the genres. Drum and bass has its rhythms and its highs and lows. Dubstep definitely has its high peak moments. Hard techno has hard energy, but it pretty much delivers it to you the entire time, and it really makes you feel, it doesn't really make you feel all aggressive. It doesn't make you feel like you're having a fun time, but it makes you feel focused and locked in and really, really in the zone is what it makes you feel like. So that's why hard techno goes at the top of my list at S tier. You can switch these around depending on the mood. Again, it really depends, which is why I was saying about 8 weeks ago, if you had asked me when I could only listen to hard techno that week because it made me feel so locked in. I mean, I tried listening to dubstep, I tried listening to drum and bass that week, and I just couldn't. I'd probably put them down here that week. But later, you know, I was in the different, you know, it's just sometimes you're in the mood for different things. So later when I was into dubstep, I enjoyed it. Later I was into drum and bass, I enjoyed it. But, you know, in that moment, hard techno was the only thing I could listen to. So these make up my S tier of my workout genres. Again, if you had asked me more than 8 weeks ago, this genre would not even be on this tier list. But it's here now. It gives you that most locked in feel, and it definitely delivered. And my set of choice this time around was, again, I mentioned I wanted to listen to Sarah Landry, but I already listened to her EDC set. It was Sarah Landry's Boiler Room set at Teletech Festival 2023. And man, did that deliver. The other thing I will say about hard techno is that it doesn't lose much on the shuffle factor, where if you're listening to a playlist, because again, it delivers a little bit more consistent energy. So if you're listening to it on shuffle, it actually doesn't lose all that much. It holds up its own on shuffle pretty well. The sets definitely made it more fun. And in case you haven't noticed, I opted for live sets with crowds because I feel like you just get a little bit more energy, you know, seeing, first of all, you can actually see the people, like let's say when you're resting in between sets, and B, sometimes just hearing the crowd noise and getting a little bit more of an atmosphere and an environment just kind of feels better. So I do like the sets that they add a lot, but again, hard techno doesn't lose a lot on the shuffle factor. So again, it's edge, most locked in, most in the zone, very, very consistent. It does a really, really good job. All right, and moving on, finally we have mid-tempo bass. Now, again, this is strictly a recency bias. If you had asked me about 2 years ago, this would be at my S. It would be over all the other ones. But recently, I just haven't been going to mid-tempo bass all that often. I haven't been able to get myself into it, to listen to it all that much. This is, again, all strictly recency bias, but I remember how much I enjoyed it, you know, a year or 2 years ago. So I'm going to put it in the A tier. Midtempo bass is nice. It has that aggression. It gives you a little bit more something that kind of dubstep doesn't give you. Dubstep gives you raw aggression. Midtempo bass kind of gives you a little bit more melodic, a little bit more atmosphere, a little bit of a darker feel. And I think that's why I still think it's a good workout genre. It still delivers, but the way I see it right now is it's a good genre to work out to, but it never quite right now is hitting the spot for me. I mean, right now, if I have like a relaxed workout week where, you know, I'm starting light, I'm not lifting that heavy weights, I listen to something a little bit more chill. So that's when I kind of like drum and bass and listening to a little bit more kind of upbeat drum and bass just to have some fun. But I'm not really looking for any aggression. I kind of want to save that aggression for when I'm hitting my heavy lifts. So when I have light workout weeks, I don't really opt for mid-tempo bass. I opt for some other things. That's when I might opt for bass house instead or something like that, or just no music if I really just want to kind of, you know, relax and not feel like I'm really kind of having to lock in and do all that stuff. I might opt for a bass house or drum and bass or no music. And then when things get heavy and I want to feel a little bit more locked in, I end up going for, you know, the drum and basses and the hard technos and the dubstep. So mid-tempo bass, I feel like right now in this moment just doesn't really kind of fit anywhere. But it definitely fit in places, you know, a year ago. I really, really liked it. And that's kind of my dilemma with it right now. I still like the genre. I know how I felt, you know, a year ago. I know I enjoyed lifting to it. But right now, I just feel like it's not really kind of hitting any necessary requirements for me to listen to it when I'm working out. So I haven't worked out to mid-tempo bass in, you know, quite a while, in a few months. But again, I still like it. I'm going to put it in A tier. Maybe as the time goes on and I really, really listen to these genres more, I might move it down. And I think, you know what, mid-tempo bass doesn't have a time or a place for me right now. But that's a conversation for another time. But again, as a competitive powerlifter, when you have your easy weeks and you have your hard weeks, I just feel like it doesn't fall into those places. And last thing I'll say, just for the ultra lifting nerds, 2 years ago, it definitely fell into my place because my lifting program wasn't all that put together. I was lifting heavy pretty much all the time, and pretty much every single time I was lifting heavy, but it wasn't always the heaviest. So if I was lifting heavy all the time, I wanted that mid-tempo bass, but I wanted to save my dubstep for my heaviest. But now that my program is solid, I have light days. I have days where I don't really need to fight all that hard. I'm still working hard, but I don't really need to fight all that hard, and they're pretty easy. They're meant to be easy days. So that's when I might not need something like mid-tempo bass anymore. And then when I have my hard days, I just go straight for the S tier. So again, it's in a weird spot right now. Other than that, nothing against mid-tempo bass. I released a mid-tempo bass song. I released Slow VIP not that long ago. It was my most recent release. So I like the genre. I still think it's a good workout genre, but right now it's not checking any boxes. So I'm gonna resist putting it into B tier because it's against a lot of bias, but we'll see. We'll see how it fares. Mid-tempo bass, A tier. Still more aggression than bass house, and it satisfies, more of that energy, but it's just an awkward spot, so we'll put it A tier. All right, and that concludes my EDM portion of this tier list. Now, as I mentioned, I'm a pretty serious lifter. I've listened to a lot of genres at this point while working out, and these are not the only genres I listen to while working out. There's kind of two more big ones. I've listened to pretty much everything at one point or another. But the genres I keep coming back to are all right here, and at this point you can see these extra two right now. That this is kind of the bonus section. We're outside of the EDM world right now because I know a lot about the EDM world. I can rationalize these things. I can't rationalize too much about these other genres, but we'll throw them in there because, hey, they're genres I work out to. You're in this video to see how I rate genres to work out to. So here we go. We'll throw in some bonus ones. Number one, open format. I listen to open format every once in a while when I work out in two scenarios. Number one, again, this is pretty much only on my light chill days. Number one, I have an open format mix that I really like because it's comprised of songs that I like. I wouldn't have thrown a song in there if I didn't like it in one way or another. So I have an open format mix that I like listening to. If I ever want something chill and I'm like, you know what, I don't listen to these songs because I listen to so much EDM. There's songs that I like that are, or not EDM that I just don't listen to all that often. And especially the ones I threw into my open format mix. So every once in a while I think, you know what, I haven't listened to these songs and I still like them. So I'll opt for open format every once in a while. I'll put this in the B tier. It's good for some accessory work. I'm never going to listen to it when I'm lifting really heavy. So that's why I like open format every once in a while. Now, the other thing I mentioned is I work out at a warehouse gym, at a powerlifting / bodybuilding gym. So they have a speaker there that plays all sorts of things. And one of the things they'll go to is they'll either be playing like some hip hop or maybe some rock, but sometimes they'll play like the Big Booty mixes by Two Friends, which are kind of some of the first mixes I listened to when I was first getting into EDM. But again, they hit the spot, well. So sometimes when I have my chill days and I don't even want to have my headphones in, and they're playing those mixes, I'll just take them off and you get a little bit of open format there. Open format with some EDM, but you get some recognizable pop songs and all that stuff. And in those cases, I really like listening to that, when I have my chill days. So those are the two scenarios I listen to open format in. So solid B tier genre, not the most energy. This one's pretty self-explicable. It's not like bass house where it's low energy, but it's not meant to be as high energy as this. I mean, it's open format. It's just a little bit of everything, so it's not going to be high energy, but it's just going to be enjoyable to listen to when you're doing non-serious stuff. All right, and finally you have rock. Now the hard part about rock, excuse my ignorance, is that I don't know much about rock. I mean, I know a lot about EDM. I don't know much about rock. And I'm using rock because rock is such a big term. There's so many genres out there. It's like if someone made a tier list and just said EDM and they threw EDM on a tier list. Well, you got to be more specific than that. EDM is such a big genre. You can't just throw EDM on a tier list. But that's what I'm doing because I'm acknowledging my ignorance that I don't know a lot about rock. So I know there's probably people that really like all sorts of genres of rock, and they can tell me a little bit about every single genre, and they might work out to a certain one and might drive to a different one, might just listen to a different one and all this sorts of things. So I'm going to let this rock be your subjective rock, whatever you like to listen to when you work out, to say that, hey, I like to listen to rock sometimes. And when I do, I would probably put this on the A tier. On occasion, it's going to kind of really hit the spot and it feels like, an S tier genre. But when I'm lifting my heavy stuffs, it's usually not going to be rock. Rock is usually when I'm listening to like my medium stuff, which is why I think this is an A tier genre. And this is something I do listen to. I'm not listening to as much mid-tempo bass, but I do listen to enough rock because it does throw a good variety into things that none of these other genres have, except for maybe like bass house. Bass house has that, the hi-hats and all that stuff. But rock just gives you a little bit more consistent and more sustained energy overall. So I'm going the A tier. I'm going to let you guys kind of pick whatever genres of rock you like. I'm big into pop punk. I like pop punk. I'm a really big pop punk fan. The shuffle factor is there. Again, I haven't listened to many sets because, then you're listening to like bands play, and I guess you could do that, but the shuffle factor is there, so you don't really need to. I'm a big fan of pop punk. I like listening to pop punk. That's kind of my go-to form of rock when I'm listening to. That's what I would put in this A tier, but I'm not going to put pop punk because, again, there's so many genres that it's just out of my ignorance that I can't, put it in there and think, okay, I know exactly what I'm saying. This is just an arbitrary general blanket rock that I personally like listening to, mostly pop punk, that I'm going to throw in there. I mean, you're talking about your classics here, you know, your Paramours, your Avril Lavigne's. I'm a big fan of MGK, things like that. So just pop punk thrown in there is really good. I like Spanish rock that sometimes I listen to when I'm working out. I'm a big fan of Mana, who has some kind of a little bit more metal-y feeling rock, but again, I'm throwing that out there arbitrarily because I don't know exactly what metal consists of, but it feels like a little bit more of that kind of harder rock side of things. So those are the type of things I like listening to. And generally speaking, this is a pop punk area, but I'm going to let you guys fill in the blank of what type of rock you guys like listening to. But the point is, I feel like no matter the genre, again, I'm biased. I would still kind of put these drum and bass, dubstep, and hard techno over, you know, my pop punks and things like that. Those are just the aggressive ones. Those are the hard hitting ones. Those are my week 4 all time PR type, you know, genres that I like listening to. So rock, pop punk, A tier genre there. All right, and that's the tier list. So again, the subjective list here. I talked a little bit about why I like each of these genres. Let's just do an overview real quick. Drum and bass, highest BPM, good rhythm, good energy, perfect for doing cardio. Loses a little bit on the shuffle factor, but sets definitely make up for it. Dubstep, most aggressive, best for PRs, best for big lifts, definitely loses out on the shuffle factor, but if you time your drops, then you're good. Or you can just listen to a set and solve the problem altogether. But best for PRs, most aggressive, best for all the, you know, your heavy lifts. Hard techno, most kind of sustained energy, you get in the zone. This is definitely the one where you want to feel locked in, you want to feel focused, you want to feel in the zone. Not as aggressive or necessarily rhythmic as these other two, but definitely gives you an energy that you don't get from these other two, in the zone, locked in feel. Mid-tempo bass, a little bit more of a relaxed kind of soother version of dubstep. Slower BPMs, a little bit more melodic, a little bit darker, a little bit more of an atmosphere going. Doesn't quite check the boxes on when there's a time and place, but still has the aggression, still has some good basses, still has tracks that will give you, you know, aggression that similar to these other genres, but right now just not checking many boxes. Rock/pop punk. Very versatile. It feels like none of these other genres because it's, you know, it's non-EDM, but you still get some good emotion. You still get some good, you know, instruments. You get some really good composition, some more dynamic bass lines for, you know, on a bass guitar versus something like these where just kind of 1 or 2 or 3 notes. Or more, depending on the track you're listening to. So a little bit more dynamic, really good at sustained energy, pretty good on the shuffle factor, so you don't really need sets. And again, it's really subjective. People have their own form of rock, so I have my own form of rock that I like. I like pop punk, but doesn't quite meet up to, you know, the high energy that these other genres give you. But rock, pretty good to work out to. And bass house, you get a little bit of groove. You get more sustained energy, albeit lower energy. This is meant to be a lower energy genre. I like this genre. Doesn't meet the aggressiveness or energy of these other ones, but it was never meant to. Good for isolation work. Good for your more chill days that you just want something in the background in. Bass house, good for kind of staying a little bit lower energy. And open format, not everything has to be EDM. Sometimes you just want to listen to songs because you want to listen to songs. Lower energy, little bit of everything, you know, you get the vocals, you get whatever it is you're listening to, you get to listen to some songs you don't listen to all that often. Pretty good variety, keeps things unique, keeps things varied, prevents the EDM from getting stale. Good for lower energy, more chill days. All right, and that is about it. Hopefully this video wasn't too long. How are we doing on time? That's beside the point. The point is, whatever. But there you go. Here's my workout genre tier list specifically for EDM, but we threw in some rock/pop punk and some open format in there because those are the other genres I'll listen to when I work out. Again, I listen to a little bit of everything at some point. Sometimes I'm just listening to no music. But this is just my subjective list. Again, we're here to have some fun. Just give you guys a little bit of insight about why I like to work out to each genre. Again, I'm big about the whys of things. So just a little bit about insight, a little bit of looking at kind of my workout side of the things, and just giving you guys a fun list for you to, you know, react to, agree or disagree with, and maybe start thinking about the list of your own and just kind of thinking, hey, you know what, some of these align with mine, some of them don't, but you know what, maybe I'll check out this genre and see what it's like. But again, let me know what you guys think. Let me know if you agree or disagree. Let me know if you would put any of these specific genres anywhere higher or lower. Let me know what EDM genres you like to work out to. Let me know why. Let me know what type of workouts you do. If the music you listen to depends on the day or the workout you're doing. Let me know what other EDM genres you would add to this, or if you would add any other non-EDM genres. If you're big into rock, if you're really, really big into rock, let me know a little bit about each genre, what the characteristics are, and what they might contribute to not only the sound, but maybe your workouts in this context. But you can just talk about rock in general because I always want to learn more. But again, that's it for the tier list. Don't forget to check out my One Way or Another drum and bass remix available for free download on SoundCloud for my drum and bass DJs. If you're a content creator and you're looking for a beat or an instrumental, check out my Airbit store to get one for yourself. And don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share. But other than that, that is all I have for you. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all next time.